Wat gebeurt hier allemaal?
Ja, dit is heel veel pech.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the 5th edition of the Football Iconic Season Review. Time flies. We're covering the top 5 leagues based on UEFA coefficient, which is England, Spain, Italy, Germany, and France. Surprise, surprise. The 2024-25 football season had absolutely everything. Disappointment, shock, redemption, vindication, relief, domination, confusion, ecstasy, collapse, and Arsenal. London has been draped in silverware this season, except for... Across the top leagues, the script unfolded like nothing we've seen before. I certainly did not have Bologna, Crystal Palace, Stuttgart, Tottenham Hotspur, and Newcastle United all winning major silverware all in the same year. Nor did I see Barcelona pushing the limits on Spain's child labor laws and not only getting away with it, but being praised for it. Manchester United somehow got even worse. Surely this is rock bottom, right? Right? We saw PSG become exponentially better immediately after the departure of Kylian Mbappe. For the first time since the Parisians have become a global superpower, they look like something that many thought they never would. A team. Manchester City were forced to stay humble. Both Harry Kane and Heung-min Son finally picked up career silverware, which should be a lesson to everyone. Don't rush it. Success will come. We have a lot to discuss today, so sit back, relax, and let's get right into it. There is only one word that can be used to describe the Premier League in 2025. Liverpool. At Anfield, Liverpool were reborn under new manager Arne Slot. There was firm belief that the Reds were going to be in for an adjustment period following the departure of Jurgen Klopp. This was not the case. Slot instilled a fast-paced collective ethos that saw Liverpool go on a 26-game unbeaten run between matchday 5 and 30, effectively sewing up the league long before the season's end. Mohamed Salah rocked up to this campaign and decided to take it all for himself. By far the best player in all of England by every metric. The stats, the eye test, the hairline, 29 goals and 18 assists. The league leader in both. With 47 goal contributions, he is now tied for overall contributions in a season. But those that he's tied with had 42 games to do it. So far as I'm concerned, he's number 1. He also ranked number 1 in just about every single attacking metric you can think of. The man's production levels are just through the roof. This is a Ballon d'Or level season if I've ever seen one. But it was a team effort, and Slot and the boys surpassed even the loftiest fan hopes. It was bittersweet though. Local man Trent Alexander-Arnold, departing for Real Madrid, was consistently in the news all season and was confirmed as the title was wrapped up. A massive loss. At least they managed to get £10 million for him, despite the fact that he had about, 5 minutes left on his contract. Joy for Liverpool translated to a familiar feeling for Arsenal and Arteta. Now firmly re-established as one of the finest teams on the planet, yet back to the feeling that surrounded the club post-2004. Always so close, yet still so far away. Second place in the league for the 3rd year in a row. No silverware since Arteta's inaugural season at Arsenal, which may feel like a distant memory at this point. Arsenal had a mixed year. The highlight is undoubtedly a magical night at the Emirates, 3-0 against Real Madrid, the defending champions of the Champions League. Arsenal made extremely light work of them, and Declan Rice is now forever etched into football folklore. Imagine scoring your first 2 free kicks in your career against Madrid. Madness. There was criticism of a corner technique, a glitch that saw Arsenal use all of their physicality to penetrate goal and saw their set-piece coach get more screen time than their opponent's manager. Seriously, has this ever happened before? Injuries were their undoing at key moments. Saka and Ødegaard both out simultaneously at one point, yet the team still managed to achieve the best defense in the league, only conceding 34. Arsenal fans were asking if Madrid is Tottenham in disguise at one point, only for Spurs to win a European trophy a couple of weeks later. Times have been better. Accurate representation of how the season was for City. While Arsenal had a mixed year, Manchester City, by their own very high standards, suffered in absolute collapse. Of course, everything is relative, and we have to take into account that this is a team that was the defending champions with 4 titles in a row before this year. Third place is glorious to most, not to them. Instead, their 24-25 was characterized by Pep Guardiola looking increasingly distressed each week. It was a bad year to be a bottle of water when this man was around. At one point, City had 1 win in 13 games across all competitions. It was a good Christmas and a glorious season of hate-watching for millions. Ballon d'Or holder Rodri suffered an ACL injury at the start of the season and took City's title hopes with him. Players were underperforming, and it seemed like there was no way out. This right here is the highlight of Phil Foden's season. Kyle Walker was banished to Italy. Jack Grealish was... I don't actually know what Grealish was doing, and despite all of this, Erling Haaland still managed 22 goals in this season. City said goodbye to Kevin De Bruyne, in many minds the greatest Manchester City player ever. It's an easy argument to make.
We cannot replace him. We cannot.
This time I think he might be telling the truth, but based on previous experiences, I am wary. Big spending Chelsea claimed a top 4 spot, but in very chaotic fashion. In Enzo Maresca's first year, Chelsea were buying up everyone that would pay attention to them for a second and tying them down for years on end. Sounds like my dating life. Reminder that Chelsea bought João Felix for £45 million. By December, it seemed like there was a method to the madness. They sat second, mere points from Liverpool. Palmer became the first player to score 4 goals in a single half of a game, doing it in 20 minutes versus Brighton. Then a cold winter saw Palmer actually begin to shiver, and Chelsea win only 3 games between late December and March, a period that left their Champions League hopes in doubt. But those doubts were ill-advised. They did it. And a UEFA Conference League was earned. With that, Chelsea became the only side to win every major club European trophy.
Interesting way to carry your trophy there.
Got no pockets, so put it there.
This man must be protected at all costs. Speaking of the Champions League, Newcastle earned a well-deserved return, but they also went ahead and achieved something even greater. Silverware for the first time in 70 years. A sensational 2-1 victory over Liverpool at Wembley birthed perhaps the beginning of an incredible journey. A towering header by Dan Burn, capped by some of the finest dance moves you've ever seen. Alexander Isak was unimpressed by his markers. This man is a phenom, truly. 23 goals in the league and he's only getting better. Watch this space. Meanwhile, Aston Villa continued to push the boundaries with Unai Emery's audacious attacking style. Villa Park became a fortress. Only 1 game was lost at home all season long. The very first one. John Duran, growing in prominence, scored one of the scorchers of the season and then proceeded to dip to Saudi Arabia. Honestly, even though Villa finished in 6th place, just outside the Champions League spots, this was a good year. FA Cup semi-finals, Champions League quarter-finals, including 2 truly incredible wins against Bayern Munich and PSG at Villa Park. In the latter, they took the eventual champions to the absolute limit, too. The surprise package of the season was undoubtedly Nottingham Forest. After 2 seasons of scraping to avoid relegation, Forest destroyed expectations week on week. For much of the campaign, they sat in the top 3. Chris continued to give wood with 20 league goals. Morgan Gibbs-White was feeding wood. Nuno Espirito Santo was watching the entire time. Sadly, a late season wobble meant they dropped out of true Champions League contention. Forest only needed 10 points from their last 8 matches to qualify for the Champions League. That's 10 out of a possible 24, and they only managed 8. Still, they will return to European football in the Conference League. Fabian Hürzeler debuted for Brighton as the youngest manager in the Premier League, only 31 years old. On their day, the Seagulls could beat anyone, and did. Liverpool, Man City, Newcastle, and Chelsea all fell to them, but consistency was the problem. Forest gave them 7 in the biggest win of the league season in February. I couldn't believe my eyes. Bournemouth, Brentford, and Fulham rounded out the mid-table with solid campaigns. Brentford were one of the league's most unpredictable, entertaining sides. Brian Mbeumo and Yohan Wissa combined for 20 and 19 goals each. Who needs Ivan Toney, I guess. Get yourself someone that believes in you as much as Wissa believed Mbeumo was going to score this penalty. This is rare to find. No story in the Premier League campaign was more romantic than Crystal Palace's. The South London club experienced the finest season in their history, and that is no exaggeration. After 11 seasons in a row of finishing between 41 and 49 points, they finally broke the 50-point mark, but that's not all. For the first time in the history of the club, a stunning 1-0 win over Manchester City in the FA Cup final. 118 years, and 2025 was the one. The enormity of that triumph for the Eagles cannot be understated. Long-suffering fans wept tears of joy at Wembley as captain Mark Gahey lifted the cup. West Ham had a year to forget in 14th. Julian Lopetegui only lasted about 6 months of the year before Graham Potter was brought out for his long-awaited return to football. Everton seemed destined for the drop by mid-season. By New Year's, Sean Dyche had only managed 3 wins in 19 games. This was a special season, so this could not be allowed to happen. It was the final year before Everton's men's side left Goodison Park, moving to a new stadium. It required a special appointment, the return of David Moyes, 12 years after he'd left Goodison Park, and the impact was immediate. In the last Merseyside derby at Goodison Park, when staring down the barrel of defeat to a far superior Liverpool, James Tarkowski scored a 98th minute screamer, undoubtedly the club's moment of the season. Just take a look at how Jordan Pickford felt about it. The most stunning collapse of the year undoubtedly came at Old Trafford. By the words of the manager that was brought in to save the day, this was the worst Manchester United side in the Premier League era. Ruben Amorim was thrown into a vat of acid when he came to this club and expected to survive. 15th place with 42 points is unbelievable. Every season, it's the worst season in Premier League history. When will it end? Bruno Fernandes had one of the most remarkable seasons in the entirety of the top 5 leagues. 39 goal contributions, all in all, from the midfield, yet his team only managed to win 11 games.
I don't understand. I don't know what's going on here.
Erik ten Hag, who was not doing well, was given extra time to put a plan into action after winning the FA Cup in 2024, a decision which now seems extremely juvenile, sacked in November. Nothing was working in any area of the club. The owner was firing a new batch of employees by the week. This is not what Sir Alex Ferguson fought for. The residents of Old Trafford were so sick and tired of the awful displays, they were trying to take things into their own hands. Certain parts of the year did provide moments of relief though, providing the most dramatic 5-4 win against Lyon in the Europa League quarterfinal. And that run to the Europa League was a silver lining, but even that ended in misery as United lost 1-0 to Tottenham Hotspur in Bilbao. A limp performance rounding off a limp season. And the strangest thing about it all is that Tottenham Hotspur were even worse, but ended up having a far more successful season. Don't get me wrong, this was well deserved by Spurs. They were better than everyone else in the competition, and that is undeniable. In a weird way, they managed to completely flip the narrative of their entire season, but also, not really. 17th place, yet the first major trophy won by the club in 17 years. This team lost 22 league games this season, the most by any team that's avoided relegation in a 38-game season. And yet, Champions League football awaits. We live in a strange timeline. Nobody deserved this more than Heung-min Son, so it was great to see him crying tears of joy for a change. It's been a long road for the Spurs boys, but at the very least, the main characters from their era of greatness have silverware to show for their efforts. Manchester United and Tottenham Hotspur were both not entirely at risk of relegation, for all being completely honest. And that's because their competition in that department were amongst the worst relegation candidates in the history of the league. Leicester, Ipswich, and Southampton were awful. The Saints actually became the first team to be relegated with a whopping 7 games still remaining. The worst performing team in all of the top 5 leagues. Congrats, I guess. However, in all of this, there is at least a shining glimmer of positivity. The everlasting legacy of Jamie Vardy. We may truly never see a crazy bastard like this ever again. From telling the Spurs fans how many Premier League trophies he has, not once, but twice in the season, to taking control of the match officiating.
No, to be honest with you, I saw Southampton breaking down the left, and with the ref down, I thought I'll blow his whistle to stop the game.
To scoring 200 goals in 500 Leicester appearances. What a man. You chat you get banged. Words to live by. Speaking of being careful about what you say, this Barcelona fan probably needs to come out with a public apology for his very own number 11. When I see a referee checking all angles before making a call, this is the level of commitment I expect. Barcelona clinched the league title in real style. Under a lot of pressure to perform and little money to help with that, players were in doubt of being registered, yet Hansi Flick excelled. Every piece of major domestic silverware is making its way to the Camp Nou, the new Camp Nou, that is. So there's even more to be excited about from a Barcelona perspective. Espanyol didn't like the fact that they won the league title at their home ground, same as they done, 2 years prior. So, Espanyol turned the sprinklers on them. It's understandable. 102 goals in La Liga made them the highest scoring team across Europe's top 5 leagues this season. The bravado-filled highline incorporated by the defense was questioned at every stage of the season. And yes, it led to some questionable moments, but not as many as you would expect. 58 times a goal against Barcelona was disallowed thanks to an offsides call, all while the team fought from behind to win matches all year. Flick was helped along the way thanks to a completely unexpected emergence of Rafinha as possibly the greatest player in the world. Definitely the greatest player over certain periods of the season. Man was electric. 59 goal contributions in 57 appearances. What in the world happened? Lamine Yamal won Playmaker of the Year with 13 assists. Insane from a 17-year-old. Insane for anyone. This man was 4 months old when Modern Warfare came out. Just let that sink in. Now, I'm only saying this to reflect on what I was doing instead of training to be better than him. I was so close. Pedri was just sublime in his first season of full fitness since the first season that he arrived at the club. Can you believe it? That midfield is definitely his now. If you believe everything you read online, you will know that Robert Lewandowski is finished at the highest level, despite the fact that he's just had his best year at Barcelona, 27 in the league, 42 goals overall. He has lost a step here and there, it's true, and quite frankly that number should be higher based on some of the sitters that he's missed, but come on, the numbers speak for themselves. Oh no! Real Madrid, on the other hand, had slightly less fortune. Coming off the back of a Champions League win and the acquisition of everyone's favorite turtle, there was a belief that this was going to be another year of Madrid domination. It was not. An injury crisis plagued the team almost from the start of the year. The club threw a temper tantrum when Vinicius Jr. failed to win the Ballon d'Or. It's still quite hard to believe that the entire club decided, just to not show up to the ceremony, even though other Madrid players were being honored. Entitlement. But I guess if anyone has earned the right to be entitled, it's Real Madrid. As Vinny Jr. kept reminding Barcelona fans as his team fell to defeat in a Clásico for the 4th time in a single season. Mbappe did deliver on expectations, leading La Liga with 31 goals and dazzling the Bernabeu with his acceleration and finishing. Yet, even in his brilliance, he could not paper over the cracks in this Madrid squad. At several points over the season, it looked like Madrid were just moments from shifting into another gear, but that gear change, it just never came. Inconsistency, injuries, and other absences led to a rare, trophyless season. Humbled by Arsenal in Europe, second to Barcelona in 3 separate competitions, Carlo Ancelotti said his goodbyes. And football really moves fast. 1 second he was crying at the Bernabeu, the next he's at a presser for the Brazilian national team. There was 1 day between these 2 clips. And perhaps the saddest of it all, the departure of Luka Modric. The man once hailed as the worst signing in the league leaves Real Madrid as one of its greatest legends and the only man to win the Ballon d'Or in the Ronaldo and Messi era. Never forget. His departure was enough to bring Florentino Perez to tears. So, this is a big deal. Where to for now for Real Madrid? A la Xabi Alonso. On the other side of Madrid, Atletico Madrid's season trajectory was familiar. For the first half of the campaign, Diego Simeone's men looked capable of a title run. First in the league at Christmas, it was their title to lose. New boys Alexander Sørloth and Julian Alvarez were excellent pickups, a combined 53 goals between them in all competitions. Antoine Griezmann is just timeless, and Conor Gallagher outperformed the expectations of a lot of people. The Spider in particular was showing why it's a crime of the highest order to have him be second choice to anyone. Having said that, spring brought the familiarity. Atleti falter as Barca and Real pulled away. Really, it's a tale as old as time. 12 points off the top when all was said and done. Complete with Real Madrid knocking them out of the Champions League in heartbreaking fashion. This time, Atleti were victims of one of the rarest infringements in the game. A double kick in a penalty shootout on an Alvarez pen. We don't see these every day. The goal was disallowed, and of course, this happened at the Metropolitano. Athletic Club were the league's overachievers, finishing 4th and qualifying for the Champions League for the first time in 10 years. If you didn't know, the club has a policy of only fielding players with either a background or strong affiliation from the Basque Country, a region in northern Spain. To have these limitations and never get relegated is one thing, but to do that, make a European semi-final and qualify for the game at its highest level is another. Hats off to Ernesto Valverde. And I haven't even mentioned that they boast the best defensive record in the league. Like England, Spain's coefficient meant La Liga gained an extra Champions League spot, so joining Athletic in the Champions League will be Villarreal. The Yellow Submarine finished 5th, level on 70 points with Bilbao. They have Ayoze Perez to thank for that. 19 goals in the league put him amongst the league's most dangerous men. Real Betis took 6th place, securing a Europa League group stage spot. Interesting for them, the club had a season of 2 halves. Destitute to start, rampant to finish. Manuel Pellegrini at 71 years old is still working magic. Isco, injury-free, still has the sauce. Johnny Cardoso is a proper prospect. But the main attraction of the season was undoubtedly Antony the Great. Antony the GOAT. Antony the God. Now all of that, but unironically. Take the man out of Manchester United and he unlocks a new transformation. Man was on the thumbnail of every Betis highlight video and the effectiveness showed. I'm always happy when a player rediscovers their joy for the game, but this one hit different. Long live Antony. I don't remember the last time I saw a city or a group of fans band behind a lone player in quite some time like this. He truly made an impression, but as the old saying goes, never fall in love with a lone player. Unfortunately, the green half of Seville have fallen victim to a cardinal sin. Welcome back to hell, my friend. You're gonna love it here. Outside of the top 6, Celta Vigo finished 7th, marking a return to European competition. Big shout out goes to Iago Aspas. Rayo Vallecano rounded up the European spots with an 8th spot finish. The Conference League awaits. The biggest club in Madrid finally have their say on the continental stage. I can't wait. On the complete flip side of things, Sevilla and Girona tried their best to get themselves sent to the 2nd division. I don't know why they did that. Both finished only a point from relegation. Just to think that only a year ago, we were talking about Girona on the other side of the table. It's what happens when you're an incubation hub for another team, I guess. The relegation battle was actually a lot more interesting than that. 2 points separated 13th and 18th place. It really could have been anyone. Valencia are truly lucky to be alive. The first 26 games of the season saw the club not leave the bottom 3, frequently in 20th place. Just look at these results. It's a bloodbath of red. Yet, somehow, a late season rally saw them go undefeated in 10 games towards the end of the year. A proper escape. In Sevilla's case, because the tiebreaker is head-to-head and 18th place Leganes had a leg up on them, they were literally inches from relegation for the first time since 2000. At one point, Sevilla players were forced to spend the night at the club's training ground after angry fans protested their 3-2 defeat to Celta Vigo. Footage shared on social media showed fans gathering outside the training ground with an access gate being damaged. Ultimately, it was Leganes, Las Palmas and Valladolid. Real Valladolid were the first to go down. The club, majority owned by Brazilian legend Ronaldo Nazário, was relegated with 4 games left. Oh, sorry, what's that? The club formerly owned by Ronaldo Nazário, sorry about that, 16 points. Oof. From a country with a title race that included 3 teams that all looks like they could win, only for 2 to stutter, we turn our attention to another country with a title race that included 3 teams that all looked like they could win, only for 2. We turn to Italy. The race for the 2024-25 Scudetto went all the way down to the wire, culminating in a champion from the south of Italy. Napoli secured number 4. It's been quite the up and down journey for the Neapolitans. A treasured 3rd title came 2 years ago, and then immediately the team dropped down to 10th place, and here we are right back at the summit. Easy as you like. I don't quite know how to explain the season that this team had. They had 3 separate multi-game stints at the summit of the table. 2 of them ended in what many believed indicated the end of their title charge, but no, Antonio Conte, he somehow made it happen, and we all know how. Contrary to recent opinions, Scott McTominay has always been a great footballer, even in a lackluster Manchester United. It's not a surprise to see him doing well, but it's how well he's done that's made jaws drop. Serie A's most valuable player in his first season and a Scudetto, 12 goals and 4 assists across the board. It's amazing stuff. Of course, this win was about so much more than Scott McTominay. Napoli invested heavily this season, almost 150 million euros spent in building a squad that lost Victor Osimhen and Kvaratskhelia in the space of 6 months. And just about all of the recruits contributed, filling big shoes really well. Conte has done a marvelous job, as he always has done in Italy. This is now the 3rd club he has won a league title with. With Conte coming in, it was inevitable that Romelu Lukaku would follow him. And follow him he did, and yet again, it ended gloriously. And despite it looking as though Conte may be on his way out, it may just end up being the beginning of something special at the club. We now turn to the team that suffered at Napoli's expense, Inter Milan. It really is crazy how a couple of weeks can change the entire outlook on whether a team had a good season or a completely forgettable one. To be fair, in the case of Inter, it was 90 minutes that did that to them. Defeat in the Champions League final for the 2nd time in 3 years. And this one was bad. Like really, really bad. 5-0 to PSG as the Parisians broke their European duck. We'll talk more on them in the French section, but as for Inter, damn. Rewind to a few weeks before, and it looked like Simone Inzaghi's men were on track for a treble. They had a shaky start to the season, but really rallied in the second half, taking the summit. In Europe, they blasted through Feyenoord, Bayern Munich, and Barcelona with a squad of elderly men, and because of that, many thought a repeat of Jose Mourinho's work with Inter back in 2010 was on the cards. They were wrong. No silverware to show for it. Which is a shame, because that will 1000% overshadow the better moments of the year that Inter had. They were runners-up both in the League and the Champions League, and semi-finalists in the Coppa Italia. They were part of the best Champions League semi-final I have ever witnessed. Notably, Inter scored 20 more goals than Napoli in the league. Lautaro Martinez and Marcus Thuram combined for 40 goals. Alessandro Bastoni, Nico Barella, Jan Sommer, and Denzel Dumfries were magnificent so often. It's a real shame how it ended. Coming off a Europa League win, Atalanta took Serie A by storm and finished 3rd on 74 points. The Bergamo-based club played a swashbuckling brand of football and even held an extended spot at the top after an 11-game winning streak. The story of Atalanta's season was the emergence of Matteo Retegui, a 24-year-old Argentine-born Italian striker. Only his 2nd season in Italy, his first with Atalanta, and he popped off with 25 goals. Tall, strong, and a clinical finisher, he was the perfect focal point for Gasparini's play. This is now the 4th time that Gasparini has finished 3rd with Atalanta in the last 7 years. For better or worse, it seems that this is as far as he is able to take them. Following the close of the year, he announced that after 9 years, he's decided to step away from the club. Truly the end of an era. Atalanta are where they are because of him. I wonder what will happen next. On to Juventus. The Bianconeri had an oddly low-profile yet dramatic season. Thiago Motta was brought in after a stellar year with Bologna and expected to really take Juve to the next level. Things worked out quite interestingly for him. Juventus went unbeaten in the first 21 games of the season. It sounds incredible, right? Juve are back, right? Well, what would you think if I told you that they never climbed higher than 5th in the table throughout all of that? 8 wins, 13 draws. In the end, Champions League qualification was earned, but Motta was a casualty, unfortunately. Igor Tudor was brought in as his replacement, and things improved slightly from the possession-heavy style of Motta to a more aggressive vertical approach. Yet, it still seems like it will be some time before we see Juve at their best again. When Roma sacked Jose Mourinho in January of 2024, they looked to a familiar face to help steady the ship, Daniele De Rossi. They were happy with the work that he did, and in June of 2024, decided to extend his contract through to 2027. And then, 3 months later, kicked him to the curb 4 games into the season after he failed to win a single game. Ivan Juric replaced him and only did marginally better. He was kicked to the curb too. However, something remarkable happened, and it was thanks to the one and only Claudio Ranieri, who only 1 year prior said that he was done with managing clubs and would only be enticed into management if it were for a national team. Evidently, he was willing to make an exception for the club that he supported his entire life and where everything began for him. He guided the club from a precarious position near relegation to a 5th place finish, orchestrating an impressive 19-match unbeaten run, all while star player Paulo Dybala had been sidelined for most of the season. From once being completely out of sight, Roma missed out on Champions League football by a single point. It's an incredible story. Perhaps things would have ended differently for Thiago Motta had he decided to stay the course with Bologna, from 4th last season to 9th in this one. They've dropped a few spots, but gained something all the more precious: their first piece of silverware since 1974, the Coppa Italia. 51 years in the making. Right behind Roma was Fiorentina in 6th place, rounding up the European spots. Key to their success, as already mentioned, was the renaissance of Moise Kean. After somehow scoring no goals for the entirety of last season with Juventus, the man bagged 19 goals in his debut season in Florence. Just goes to show you how much environment matters. Then again, as Bologna have shown us, you also need to know when to stay put. I remember when everyone thought that AC Milan were at the end of their banter period in 2022. League champions and good value for it. Sadly, it was all an illusion. 8th place and a loss in the Coppa Italia final. They did finish 2nd last season, sure, but 20 points behind 1st place Inter makes it hard to celebrate, especially considering how 24-25 went. Big questions were asked of Sergio Conceição, and when those questions weren't answered, he was sacked. Nothing Christian Pulisic can't fix, though. I mean that, unironically, he led the club in goals with 11 and was only 1 behind Rafael Leao in assists. But is this good enough for this great club? A better season than Inter Milan though, technically. Como received a lot of coverage this season for obvious reasons. Purchased by Indonesia's richest men, Robert and Michael Hartono, in 2019, making them the richest owners in the league, the two reportedly combined for personal net worths of 50 billion USD. In the 5 years after the purchase, Como were promoted twice, finding themselves in the top division for the first time in 21 years. And finally, they were managed by former boy wonder Cesc Fabregas, who also happens to be a owner alongside Thierry Henry. 10th place. With all of these advantages, it's easy to say that this was inevitable, but high-level football is not that easy. Fabregas and his team should be proud. Staying up was success enough, but a mid-table finish was beyond their wildest dreams. After transferring from Real Madrid, Nico Paz had a standout year in Como colors, 9 assists and 6 goals from the midfield. The 20-year-old has shown creative promise and a will to work hard. At the bottom of the Serie A table, Empoli, Venezia and Monza faced the disappointment of relegation. Monza was the first team relegated from the league and came close to setting an all-time low points record. But hey, it could be worse. They could be Sampdoria. Once a powerhouse in the European Cup final back in 1992, they were in Serie A back in 2023, and now, for the first time, they have dropped to the 3rd division. I have no words for this man anymore. The natural order of things was restored in Germany. After last year's shock title by Bayer Leverkusen, Bayern Munich reclaimed the Meisterschale, clinching their record 33rd Bundesliga crown. With 2 matches to spare, the Vincent Kompany experiment seems to have paid off. From Burnley to Bayern, it's quite the leap. Now all we need is Sean Dyche at Dortmund. Germany is not ready. All eyes were on Harry Kane last year, the man who left Tottenham Hotspur for silverware, only to not win a single thing at a club that's always winning something, but he was not about to let that happen again. Kane scored 26 league goals to finish as the Bundesliga top scorer, finally silencing the jibes about his lack of trophies. Thomas Müller, in his 16th season with the first team, added yet another title to his overflowing cabinet. His role was minor though, and by the end of it, his time with the club was over. Before leaving, however, he performed a stand-up routine right in the middle of the Allianz before saying goodbye. He's quite the character, and I hope he never changes. Bayern's win was not purely down to Kane and Müller though. 22-year-old French winger Michael Olise, snapped up from Crystal Palace, turned into the Bundesliga breakout star. 12 goals and 15 assists earned him the league's Rookie of the Season award. João Paulinho was expected to have a much better season, arriving from Fulham and thought of as the defensive-minded piece of the puzzle missing in the midfield. It hasn't seemed to work out. In fact, his own peers have voted him as the biggest flop of the Bundesliga season, which, if you think about it, is actually just extremely rude that this is polled in the first place. I think he'll be hoping to have a Modric type of turnaround. In any case, the defense was much improved for Bayern, conceding 13 less goals compared to the previous season with 10 more points. Curiously, their points tally last season would have been enough to win the league this season too. It just goes to show how much of a freak year Bayer Leverkusen had. And speaking of the defending champions, they had to settle for a runners-up spot. I'm sure that very few people expected a repeat of the heroics from 2024, so I would say that this was a solid campaign. Xabi Alonso's young team were the only side to seriously challenge Bayern through the first half of the year. They never lost a single game away from home. A very impressive record, but with 12 matches drawn, the joint highest in the league, it's no wonder Bayern began to pull away. Granit Xhaka remains a staunch leader. Florian Wirtz was a creative force in their attacking play, providing 13 assists and scoring 10 goals. Alejandro Grimaldo also contributed significantly from a defensive position, registering 8 assists. At the moment, it's hard to shake the feeling that the great days of Leverkusen have come to a close. Jeremy Frimpong is already gone, Xabi Alonso too, Wirtz soon. The team is being gutted and incoming manager Erik ten Hag has a lot of work to do. Eintracht Frankfurt surprisingly claimed 3rd place, the highest they've climbed since the early 90s, and even despite losing star man Omar Marmoush to Manchester City, they remained firmly in the Champions League spots. But perhaps even more surprising was number 4, Borussia Dortmund. For so long it looked like Dortmund were destined for an extremely disappointing season, and don't get me wrong, maybe it will still be remembered that way. The first half of the season, at the very least. Fans were having stern words with players after losing to relegation candidates. At one point, the team was sat in 11th place. It seemed that everything that Nuri Sahin did was a losing strategy. But when Niko Kovac took over in February, things changed rapidly. A team that was unable to string 2 wins in a row suddenly finished the season with 9 wins in their last 12, climbing from 11th to 4th. Hopefully, for the sake of all of their fans, they can keep this up. For the sake of Schalke, however, hopefully they rehire Nuri Sahin. Outside of the top 4, SC Freiburg continued to impress, finishing 5th and claiming a Europa League spot. Japanese winger Ritsu Doan provided flair. And to finish off the Conference League qualification, Mainz achieved a notable 6th place finish. RB Leipzig slumped to 7th in their worst season in Bundesliga history, which is crazy considering that they've only been in the Bundesliga since 2016. No European football for them for the first time is their award. And even worse, it seems that starboy Benjamin Šeško is about to fly away. Too much Red Bull, clearly. For the first time in a long time, the DFB Pokal did not involve the mega powerhouses of German football. This time, it was VfB Stuttgart and Arminia Bielefeld. Somewhat similar to Bologna in Italy, last season, Stuttgart flew very high in the league, second place above Bayern Munich. This time around, a sobering reality saw them drop to 9th. However, they had a much more successful run at the year this time, DFB Pokal winners. Where their story differed from Bologna is that Bologna did it versus AC Milan, whereas Stuttgart did it against third-tier Bielefeld. But even still, while Stuttgart were favorites, they still needed to get the job done, which they did. I say this in every review video, but that trophy is just gorgeous. Hands down the best looking national cup in European football, in my eyes at least. Mid-table also included Borussia Mönchengladbach and VfL Wolfsburg, both of whom had pretty meh seasons relative to expectations. Both scored a lot, 55 and 56, and both conceded just as many, 57 and 54. The bottom half saw St. Pauli and Hoffenheim just barely survive. Both were only 3 points from doom. For St. Pauli, simply avoiding relegation was a success, as this was their first Bundesliga season since 2011. Meanwhile, Hoffenheim, consistent European contenders in the 2010s, 7th place as recently as last season, have some soul-searching to do. FC Heidenheim had to enter the relegation playoffs and were dangerously close to having to leave the top division. But fortunately, the team managed a 4-3 victory over SV Elversberg and will remain. The same cannot be said for Holstein Kiel and VfL Bochum. The fact that both teams had 25 points and identical 6-7-21 records for wins, losses and draws shows that at least misery had company. Realistically, this was Holstein Kiel's first Bundesliga season ever, so you can't read too much into this. It just proved a bridge too far. For Bochum, this was a long time coming. Survivors of the playoffs last season, their luck seems to have just ran out. Finally, we head over to France, the home of the best team in all of Europe. Paris Saint Germain were champions in the Ligue, no surprises there, their 4th consecutive and record 13th overall, but Liga featured a lot of drama beneath the summit, including a tight race for Europe and an agonizing relegation scrap that went to the final seconds of the final day. The capital club was simply in a league of their own domestically. They clinched the league title absurdly early and went the first 30 games of the year unbeaten, only to draw and lose twice in their next 3. Shambolic from them, really. And it didn't end there. Every single piece of silverware available to the club found a home in their trophy cabinet. This is what complete and total domination looks like. Kylian Mbappe left PSG to win Champions League football. Well, from the outside looking in, it seems that him leaving was what was needed for that to happen, and just not the way he thought. Luis Enrique has developed one of the most terrifying ensembles to hit world football, a group of extremely young, hungry, unbelievably talented players, all playing out of their skin with a will to die for the badge, the manager, and each other. Desiree Doué, 19 years old, got himself a brace in the Champions League final and could easily have gotten more. William Pacho, 23 years old, in his first season with PSG was immaculate. Achraf Hakimi, Gianluigi Donnarumma, João Neves, Vitinha, Bradley Barcola, Nuno Mendes, Kvicha Kvaratskhelia, Warren Zaire-Emery, all of these players and more are 26 and under. This team is not going anywhere anytime soon. Now don't get me wrong, this isn't some Cinderella story. This over here is a list of the top 20 earners in Ligue 1 for the 24-25 football season. Notice anything? I'm sure you do. However, it's important we acknowledge that if it were only about money, then PSG would have been this good years ago. They weren't, and we have to commend them now. Marquinhos, who is the only remaining player from the first influx of QSI signings, has seen it all. Nobody deserves to revel in this victory more than him. But apart from them all, Ousmane Dembele has emerged as the crown candidate for football's greatest prize. The man has blossomed into a truly incredible footballer. Hopefully, he has only just entered his peak. We're probably going to see a lot of PSG bandwagoners now, so be prepared for that. Only 4 points separated 3rd and 7th when it was all said and done. It ended with Marseille, Monaco, and Nice making the top 4. For Marseille, this season was a major success. After a turbulent 2024 where managers came and went and fans nearly revolted, OM found stability under coach Roberto De Zerbi. They haven't won over many fans though, employing a couple of players that have been in the headlines for all the wrong reasons in the past. Mason Greenwood, Elie Wahi, Amin Harit. You can Google all the details. This isn't that kind of video. Interestingly, Wahi signed on for 25 million euros in August, only to leave 6 months later for Frankfurt for 26 million. Strange. Greenwood himself has been subject to a few accusations of attitude problems and such. Nonetheless, regardless of what you think of Greenwood, he is a very, very talented footballer. 21 goals in the league, level with Ousmane Dembele, and very clearly one of the main reasons that Marseille will see the Champions League next season. Adrien Rabiot, Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, and Amine Gouiri are among others that made this so. Nice will once again be put in the qualifying rounds. If they pull through, it will be a first Champions League proper appearance since 1960. Monaco's second half of the season was largely driven by the arrival of Mika Biereth, a 22-year-old Danish striker who simply exploded out of nowhere, arrives in January 2025, plays 16 games, scores 13. Absolutely sensational. An Arsenal Academy graduate too. Lille and Lyon both qualified for Europa, but out of all of the teams in the top division, few, if any, have gone through a period quite like Lyon. Last year, they failed to win any of their first 11 games of the season and were rock bottom at 1 point, but eventually rallied to 6th. This year, they remained in the exact same spot, but thankfully didn't have to go down such a turbulent path. However, due to poor financial management and rising debt in the region of €500 million, they are still subject to being provisionally relegated. With no Champions League football and several players likely needing to be sold or released, the future is not looking bright. The worst of it all, losing to Manchester United. Embarrassing. Strasbourg finished in 7th, level on points with Lyon, rounding up the European spots. To the dismay of Mika Riches, his favorite team, Brest, finished in 9th and won't be making a European appearance. The relegation battle was quite a tight one too, with about 6 teams all in contention. Le Havre managed to stay up for the 2nd year running, which is a massive achievement in of itself. And so, it was Montpellier, Saint Etienne, and Reims who all faced the drop. All great, historic teams with lovely history and multiple league and cup titles between them, all gone. And there we have it, another season in the books. There have been thrills, spills, and everything in between. Let me know what I missed out in the comments, I'm sure there is a lot. We now look forward to the future and beyond. It's been a pleasure waffling at you guys this season. Let's hope we can keep it going for many years to come. I'm Tinashe, that's all for me today. Hope you guys enjoyed, hope you're having a great day. Cheers, and I will catch you next season.